Hey Crypto Twitter, Cole Dermott here, welcoming you to the premiere episode of Quickfire, where we get to know the brilliant minds behind blockchain in just 5 minutes flat. Today, I'm joined by Nader Dabit, Director of Developer Relations at EigenLayer, blockchain educator extraordinaire, and one of the most influential voices helping developers bridge from Web 2 to Web 3. Here's how Quickfire works. We'll start with the lightning round. Nader has just 5 seconds to answer each question before we cut him off and move on to the next. Then we'll dive a bit deeper with 20-second responses on everything from EigenLayer's restaking revolution to the future of blockchain development. No rehearsals, no prepared answers, just authentic insights delivered at breakneck speed. Let's see how Nader handles the pressure. All right, Nader, the clock starts now with our signature first question. With that in mind, if you're ready, what's your favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe?
I think that every chocolate chip cookie I've ever eaten has been great.
All right, that's it for question number one. That is it for question number one. With that in mind, let's move on to question number two. Nader, if you're ready. All right. Can you sum up EigenLayer in just 3 words?
Shared security for every application in the world.
Perfect. Awesome. With that in mind, let's move on to question number four, or question number three. If you're ready, what
Let's
is
do it.
the first crypto you ever purchased?
Bitcoin.
Awesome. Okay. Let's move on to question number four. Do you think restaking is innovative or a systemic risk?
Innovative. Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Question number five now. What do you think is the most underrated blockchain programming language?
Rust.
Perfect. Let's move on to question number six. Ethereum versus all Alt L1s. What do you think the winner will be in 2026?
I think it's going to be both.
Okay.
I think there's going to be Ethereum and Solana and other L1s.
Perfect. With that in mind, let's move on to question number seven. What Web 2 developer skill do you think is most valuable in Web 3?
Probably AI.
Okay. Solid. Let's move on to question number eight. NFTs. Do you think they'll make a comeback or are they permanently diminished?
I don't think they'll make a comeback in the sense of speculation, but as a primitive, yes.
Sorry about that, Nader. With that in mind, let's move on to question number nine. Can you tell me about your role? Let me unmute. Can you tell me about your role at EigenLayer in just one sentence?
I help developers build and launch companies and applications.
Solid. Let's. Sorry about the cutoffs there. Just very strict on the timer here. With that in mind, let's move on to question number 10. Do you think developer adoption? What is the biggest blocker for developer adoption right now?
I think developer experience is still very restrictive relative to other areas.
All right. Let's move on to question number 11. What do you think is the most exciting project building on top of EigenLayer right now?
I like the ZK-TLS protocols a lot. I'm not going to name a specific one. I like all of them.
All right, let's move on to the last question for the lightning round. In your opinion, AI's impact on blockchain development, do you think it's been positive or negative?
I think it's been positive. It just helps people build a lot quicker and also gives more things that you can build.
Solid. So that's it for our initial lightning round of questions. Nader, any initial thoughts before we move on to the deeper dive questions where you'll be asked longer form and have a bit more time to respond to each?
No, I thought that was great. Let's keep going.
Awesome. Okay, so for the first question for the deep dive round, be a bit out there. Nader, would you rather be an operator in an AVS or the asset being staked? Explain your answer.
I would definitely probably say operator because operators are out there doing work and they're, I would say active and I'm an active person. So I would probably choose to be an operator.
Solid. Let's move on to question number two for the deep dive round. So, Nader, you transitioned from Web 2 at Amazon to Web 3. What did you find was the hardest adjustment in making that transition?
I would definitely say the complexity of like achieving things that haven't been done before is a lot higher and harder. I think in crypto versus most problems, at least for the most part, have been solved in Web two when I was working at Amazon.
Solid. That makes a lot of sense. So next up, Nader, as Director of Developer Relations at EigenLayer, What's your strategy for attracting traditional developers to blockchain?
I think you have to make the developer experience very good and lower the barrier to entry for building like valuable applications. So that's always been the driver for developer adoption, like period. And then number two would be like just not saying that blockchain development is like all that different. Ultimately, it's just about building software. And I think that if you approach it from there, it's just another piece of the stack that people can utilize.
That makes a lot of sense. It looks like there's one question that did kind of slip through the cracks here from my initial list. So I'm going to restart this slide. We'll call this question number 4, but just out of curiosity, how does EigenLayer's approach to restaking change the fundamental security model of crypto, in your opinion?
I think what it essentially does, it just unlocks a lot more flexibility for what developers can build. You're no longer constrained within a specific blockchain virtual machine or environment. You're able to build any programming language, interact with any service, and call any API, but have the same verifiability and security as an L1.
Great answer. Right within the time there. All right. Let's move on to the next question then. We just went through number 3, so we're on to 5. What developer tooling gap in the crypto ecosystem do you think still needs to be filled?
I think a lot of I would say a lot of the developer experience around smart contract development has been solved for the most part, and we're kind of at a good place. I think essentially being able to kind of like provide more flexibility for what people can build, and I think EigenLayer kind of helps solve that.
Awesome. Sorry, I was curious in your answer there, so I allowed you a little bit of extra time to get
Thank
the
you.
rest out. Next question is for in terms of like how will EigenLayer's AVS's and AVS ecosystem evolve over the next year, in your opinion? Where do you see it going?
Um, First of all, we're going to have a lot more mainnet products, and we're going to have a lot more API surface area for developers to build. So we're going to see, therefore, a lot more apps. And we're also improving the developer experience for actually building AVSs themselves. So we're hoping to make it literally like 100x easier at some point, maybe in the next year, 10x easier.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question then. This is a bit more about you rather than broadly EigenLayer. What's a contrarian view you hold about Ethereum's future that you think most people would disagree with?
A contrarian view. I kind of maybe would. I don't really have, I would say, too many contrarian views. I think if you look at crypto Twitter, you kind of see pretty much every view. And I have more of like, I would say, a nuanced view, to be honest.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. No, I definitely feel like a lot of the time on crypto Twitter, everything kind of falls down into these broad scale buckets, and nuance sort of flies out the window over there.
Totally.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question then. How do you see AI and blockchain converging in the next 2 years? And is EigenLayer positioned to play a role in this convergence?
I think DeFi and verifiability, when it comes to AI, have a very good synergy. There's a lot of, I would say, like agental types of applications that need verifiability, that have like DeFi like built in, essentially automated trading and things like that. We have tons of teams building on EigenLayer for that exact purpose.
Solid. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question then. So your content creation has been very influential in this space. How do you balance building versus teaching within the ecosystem?
Well, with my current role, I spend less time than I would like actually building. But in order to teach, you have to build. So I typically try to carve out time in my day to build pretty much almost every day. And then when I come up with something that I feel like could be taught that people might not know in a short amount of time, I still teach it.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna move on to the third from last question here, question number 10 for the deep dive round. What's the most common misconception about EigenLayer you find you have to correct?
I think people initially heard about EigenLayer through restaking, but restaking is kind of just a means to an end. It's essentially how do you create the economic security to ultimately build the verifiable cloud, or essentially a platform for developers to build verifiable apps. So we're beyond restaking now. We're at the application part, and people still think of EigenLayer as restaking.
Awesome. Okay, second to last question here for the deep dive before we close off the interview. Beyond ETH, what blockchain ecosystem are you most excited about from a developer perspective?
I think Solana for sure. They have incredible ecosystem, incredible founders, incredible community, incredible builders and companies. Like it's just overall a successful thing that can't just be easily duplicated just by cloning or copying the same tech. It's more of like an entire organism at this point.
Awesome. Perfectly within the 20 seconds once again. We're going to move on to our final question for the interview. With that in mind, if you had to bet on one blockchain use case becoming mainstream first, what would you bet on?
I think social would be right there at the top, mainly because it's a good primitive to take advantage of the composability aspect, the public data aspect. ZKTLS kind of like unlocks a lot of stuff there and is essentially able to be applied at almost every application in Web 2.
Okay, and that's a wrap on our lightning round and deep dive with Nader Dabit from EigenLayer. In just 5 minutes, we've covered everything from chocolate chip cookie recipes to the convergence of AI and blockchain. Nader, thanks for being such a great sport and thinking on your feet. For everyone watching, is there anywhere you want them to check out for you on social media or for EigenLayer or otherwise?
Yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm Dabit3 on Twitter or X, I guess you could say, as well as Warpcast. And if you want to keep up with what we're doing at EigenLayer, follow the EigenLayer handle.
Awesome. So, guys, if you enjoyed this format, be sure to smash that like button and share your favorite answer in the comments. Who should come on Quickfire next? Feel free to tag them below. I'm Cole Dermott, and this has been Quickfire with Nader Dabit, where the brightest minds in Web3 shine in 5 minutes or less. See you next week.